All right, I'm joined by the Acting Director of the National Institute of Communicable Diseases, Adrian Puren. Thanks for your time, Prof. We appreciate it. I want to know if we're over this peak yet or not.
My sense is that I know that there are some concerns about the levels of testing, in particular in KwaZulu-Natal, but my overall sense is that, in fact, we have reached the peak overall and are now starting the decline. But, of course, it's off a high peak in terms of the incidence numbers per 100,000, in particular the three provinces, in particular Gauteng, the Western Cape and the Northwest. I think the other provinces such as Limpopo and Mpumalanga have probably also reached their peak and are starting to decline. There's ongoing transmission in the Northern Cape and in the Free State, but again there are certainly there's evidence of declines as well. And similarly, when you look at hospitalizations and death, I know that the numbers are still substantial, but my sense there too is that those numbers will also decline in the next few days as well. We should certainly see the evidence for that at least. Yeah,
do you have a figure on the number of people in hospital currently?
Yes, I think it was about 16 or 17,000 individuals in hospital. The majority are in the general wards, but a certain percentage are still in high care and in ICU and on ventilation as well, yes.
This seems to be a seesaw in terms of the infection rate, because we saw it drop dramatically yesterday and now we're back up today. What exactly does that mean in terms of reading these numbers?
Yeah, I think it becomes very difficult, and therefore I think one would like to use the so-called the 7-day moving average, and that smooths out the curve to give us a better sense. So as you know, that the testing has probably been fluctuating, in particular, and that I think is the concern is about KwaZulu-Natal. You saw a marked dip in the positivity rate there, or the numbers, and that may well be because there have been disruptions in testing, either people not presenting for testing or disruptions at a laboratory level and reporting of those particular results. So I think we just really need to be keeping an eye on the 7-day moving average in terms of really trying to make some sense of what's actually happening. It may well still be that there's a flow through. In other words, people were hesitant or did not present for testing, and that's coming through now in terms of the numbers that we are currently seeing.
And should we be worried about the fact that more people are going to test positive in KwaZulu-Natal, given the large groups of people we saw during the unrest last week?
Yeah, it's one of those difficult things. I think it may well be a contributing factor to the numbers, but again, it's always difficult to attribute it directly. But I think the conditions, for example, if there are large numbers in close contact for a continuous period of time in the absence of masks, and there's a great deal of circulation. I know it's in the outdoors, but if there's still some aerosolization present, then yes, one can still see those types of infections occurring, but it becomes very difficult. Of course, those individuals go back into their community, so there is where the spread is, and that's where we may see spikes in terms of the actual numbers. And I think that's what my comment is about KwaZulu-Natal. We've certainly seen a decline. Is this a real decline, or is it the decline because of the disruptions? And I think we'll only see that in the next week or two.
Yeah. So overall, Prof, if you're looking at the numbers for the past 4 weeks, because we would now enter 4 weeks on adjusted level 4, you were one of the groups that were calling for government to relook at the restrictions, perhaps introduce tougher measures because of the numbers, the large numbers. Could you say now that it's time to adjust it down, ease things up a bit because the numbers are dropping?
Yeah, so again, the NICD does not directly make those particular recommendations. They certainly look at the numbers. But I think obviously the government and particularly the president will look at those numbers in conjunction with other factors, such as mobility factors and things like that, and then make some adjustment to that. One would think that a nuanced approach may well be the way to go, but of course that is ultimately the prerogative of the national government as to how it would like to proceed. And I think it's really going to really depend on interpreting what those numbers mean. Is it, again, particularly when you look at KwaZulu-Natal, is that because of the events of last week, whereas, for example, the other numbers in, say, Gauteng, Western Cape and the other provinces may well reflect a true decline, and therefore the effectiveness of the implementation of the adjusted levels that we have in place.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying my luck because I wanted scientific research because, government always says we have scientists who are telling us what to do, advising us on what to do. And let's talk about the vaccines because we're seeing over 35s very happy to go and register to get the vaccines. But some people are still complaining about side effects. Have we noticed anything major in recent weeks when it comes to these vaccines we're using in South Africa?
So the NICD does not monitor those directly, but my sense would be that the majority, we will get a sense that people will have side effects, and that was noticed in the efficacy trials. So I think people should not be too surprised that they have side effects, and they should accept that those side effects should actually decline, especially if they're using anti-inflammatories or antipyretics, for example, hydration, that those side effects will certainly disappear. So the major side effects, of course, will be at the site of the injection site, but they may also have some generalized body fevers, aches, and so forth. But again, as I said, these should really resolve. We should really see very rare serious side effects that we certainly saw with the J&J that led to its suspension. But at the moment, I'm not aware that there are those an increase in those rare side effects in the country.
Prof, I was reading some information on the NICD's website about people who can vaccinate and who can't. There's been some confusion around the waiting period. If you have COVID, how long should you wait before you actually get the vaccine? What's the final recommendation on that?
Yeah, I think that still needs to be resolved. I know that there are different opinions, and I think that is a matter of needing resolution as to what that waiting period should be. So I can't really comment directly what that should be. But I agree with you that there are different opinions, and there are ongoing efforts, in fact, to try and resolve what is, as you said, led by the science. What does the science tell us about whether it should be 30 days or 6 weeks, whatever that period is, in order to get vaccinated. And nevertheless, I would still encourage people to vaccinate regardless.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other question is, if people have COVID-19, they're asymptomatic, and they go and get vaccinated because they don't know, is there anything that they should be worried about?
But it's difficult because, again, if they haven't tested, it's an unknown, and therefore I think there may well be evidence that they may well respond to the vaccine, and in fact, because their antibody responses may well not be to the same extent as those who experience symptomatic, mild, moderate, or even severe. But my sense would be that they should vaccinate, and I'm sure if it's the Pfizer, for example, they will get a second dose, and that will certainly boost their immune responses as well. There is evidence, as you know, from certain of the trials that, in fact, individuals who have experienced infections and then were followed on by a vaccine, that in fact their immune responses are boosted. So I don't think that there's any major concern about asymptomatic individuals at all.
All right, great. Thank you so much for your time and your insight. Appreciate it. That was the Acting Director of the National Institute of Communicable Diseases, Adrian Puren.